all of our ulama who gave as much as they could to preserve this faith so that we had a chance of finding perfection in finding Allah. For all of our marhumeen and for those who have no one to pray for them, please remember them all with their Surah Al-Fatiha. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وشفيع ذنوبنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المأسومين المذلومين واللعنة الله على أعدائهم من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. وصلى الله عليك يا سيدي ويا مولاي يا لثارات الحسين يا حجة الله يا ابن الحسن يا صاحب العصر والزمان. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل. My dearest elders, sisters, brothers, salamun alaykum wa rahmatullah. A survey was conducted by the organization IPSOS, Ipsos. And in 2019, they found that 58% of respondents worldwide believed that their political system has been captured by an elite that is corrupt, obsolete, and unreformable. Transparency.org reports that 131 of the governments across the world have made no significant progress against corruption in the last decade, despite multiple commitments and dedications that they would do so. 2/3 of countries around the world score below 50 points, which according to this system indicates that they have serious corruption problems. And at least 27 countries are at their lowest score ever since measures began. And there's an argument to say that our political systems are great and working wonderfully in the world today. When leaders, managers, politicians, anyone who is in a position of some sort of authority has no sincerity within them, has no accountability to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then anything can happen under their watch. They won't just let things happen, they themselves will be amongst those who are causing that very corruption. And as I said, this can be in countries, this can be in local societies, this can be in communities, these can be in your own businesses, dare I say even in your own homes, when you have house help and your own employees to look after. So the question that arises is, what is Islam's solution? What does Islam have to say about a system that can encourage moral management, moral leadership, to avoid any sort of corruption? And is it just cliche that we somehow have an Islamic solution for everything? Or is the Islamic solution that we have actually so compelling that even some political institutions in the world use this very framework, or at least claim to use this very framework? Unsurprisingly, we'll be using letter number 53 in Nahj al-Balagha, where Amir al-Mu'mineen advises and sends a letter to a phenomenal ambassador of Islam, none other than Malik Ashtar. For those of you who are familiar with this letter, you may have just taken some of the lessons that usually come up. And we're going to cover those, but I want to just take a step back and look at this letter objectively. Because I really feel we do Amir al-Mu'mineen a disservice. You ask the average Muslim today, what does Amir al-Mu'mineen mean to you? And they'll say some beautiful things. Usually they'll start off with his bravery. Maybe they'll then come across his sincerity. Both are beautifully correct. Maybe they'll mention that he was such a trusted ambassador for the faith and the right-hand man of the Holy Prophet, and the only one that was suited to Sayyidat al-Nisa al-Alameen Fatima al-Zahra salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayha. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. But I think we're missing a big part of Amir al-Mu'mineen. And I think if this letter were to be put in front of any international political student in the world, they would be taken back by not just its content, but even the framework and the way that it's been laid out. Remember, Amir al-Mu'mineen didn't go to an official university per se. He wasn't like some of us who get educated in the West and come here, or get educated in the East and then provide to our local economies. No, there was no official university for Amir al-Mu'mineen. Yet the way he writes this abstract at the beginning, he outlines the key things that he's going to cover in this letter to Malik. Then he has an introduction, then he begins point after point with evidence and Quran and Hadith over and over and over and over again. It's super logical, it's very concise. The sort of language that he uses makes Arabs baffled as to who this man is. So much so that within Nahj al-Balagha we have approximately 200 sermons, nearly 80 letters, and almost 500 sayings. Keep that in your mind. Let's say that you go to a decently stocked library. We could probably say that there are about 100,000 books that could be in a decently stocked library, maybe even more. Let's say that each book has 5,000 sentences. For those of you good at maths, 100,000 times 5,000, count the zeros, and I think you end up with 500 million sentences. If you were to go to this library, 500 million sentences within this library, but if you were to take out just 2 sentences from Nahj al-Balagha, print them on the wall of that library, don't say it's from Nahj al-Balagha, the eloquence or the balagha of Nahj al-Balagha would make any Arab speaker go, I know who this man is that wrote these sentences. My evidence? Many of you here speak English, and if not, I'm sorry, I must just sound like a weird parrot just making noise. Many of you here speak English. If we were to put some Shakespeare words on this wall, would you be able to know that it's Shakespeare? Yes, it stands out. Now, English isn't known for its poetry. Arabic is. Yet even if you were to take those lines of Amir al-Mu'mineen and put them on the wall of that library, anyone who understands the Arabic language would be baffled by who this man is. I'll give you an example. The letter waw in Arabic. Usually we translate it to be the word and. There are 18 different versions of when waw is used at the start of a sentence as to what that sentence could now mean. And Amir al-Mu'mineen encompasses all of these. But he didn't go to university. Why don't we call him a scholar? Why don't we call him an academic? Why do we do him a disservice when actually he wasn't just an academic? He was also a phenomenal politician and a true moral manager. Now add that to all his other qualities and tell me what a man that we have. What a phenomenal individual that is unrivaled to succeed the Holy Prophet. So my first sincere and humble advice to the community is this. How many copies of Nahj al-Balagha do we have between the families here present? How many of our families are opening Nahj al-Balagha? Have we found any of these sermons that we can maybe put up in our homes, educate our children with, educate ourselves with first? How much have we invested in Nahj al-Balagha? And if I may say this, just to shock you how much we've neglected it, you may have a copy of Nahj al-Balagha in your own home, in English. Did you know that Nahj al-Balagha in English has only been translated from Arabic to Urdu and then to English, or from Arabic to Farsi and then to English? Imagine what a disservice we've done to a book that is about balagha. For those of you who study Arabic, you'll study sarf, nahu, and eventually you'll go on to balagha. It's a type of eloquence in Arabic. And we've not got an English translation of it yet. Inshallah, in 2 years' time, it will be coming from a scholar who's been working on it for the last 19 plus years. And inshallah, for the success of that project, can you offer salawat ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Amir al-Mu'mineen writes a letter to Malik al-Ashtar al-Nakha'i when the position of Muhammad ibn Abi Bakr had become very precarious and likely to collapse in Egypt. So much so. And look at the dhulm on Ahl al-Bayt, just to really illustrate to you a point here. Whether you are Ahl al-Bayt or whether you are a lover of Ahl al-Bayt, even Muhammad ibn Abi Bakr, who had a love, an undenying and unrelentless love for Ahl al-Bayt, even he was killed and his corpse put into a donkey and then burnt. Didn't matter who you were. It mattered if you loved Ahl al-Bayt and backed them. That was the criteria for whether you die or otherwise. So whilst his position was under threat, Amir al-Mu'mineen appoints Malik to be the next governor of Egypt. And in this abstract, Amir al-Mu'mineen writes the following steps: that he's going to cover the collection of revenues, fighting against enemies, seeking the good of its people, and making its cities. If we were to look at the UK's ministerial code, and for some reason it's seen as a very well-established government, I won't go into it. If you look at the very first page of the ministerial code in the UK, which almost every line of it's been broken in the last few years, it says that the ministers of the crown are expected to maintain high standards of behavior, laughable, and to behave in a way that upholds the highest standard of propriety, extremely laughable. My question to the government of the UK: who holds those ministers that gave false contracts in COVID to their friends to account? Have any of those UK ministers been arrested yet? No. Have any of them been fined yet? No. So it's all well and good writing a ministerial code saying that you need to uphold the best of standards. Sounds very wonderful. My question is, who is going to uphold it? Who's going to call you out when you have poor results, rather than going to the House of Commons and just debating the guy opposite by insulting him and his background? That's the UK ministerial code. How does Amir al-Mu'mineen approach here the first part of his ministerial code, the first part of his guidance to Malik, the first command, the first thing that you'll see in this letter to Malik is amrahu bitaqwallah. Amrahu bitaqwallah. Amir al-Mu'mineen, in his very first guidance and obligation upon Malik, in the letter as he becomes the governor of Egypt, is to have taqwa of Allah. The entire first paragraph has got nothing to do with how to run a country, with how to collect taxes, with how to defend yourself. It's primarily about the soul of Malik. Make sure that you are aware that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is greater and will watch your every single decision and move. I.e., you dare take a penny from the public treasury, know that there will be a day where you'll be held to account, which is what we discussed in the last 2 nights. Amir al-Mu'mineen tells him he has ordered him to fear Allah, to prefer obedience to him, and to follow what he has commanded in the Quran out of his obligatory and elective commands, without following which one cannot achieve virtue, nor can one be evil save by opposing them and ignoring them, and to help Allah the glorified with his heart and his tongue, because Allah is whose name is sublime, and Allah takes the responsibility for helping him who helps him and for protecting him who gives him support. Malik, you want someone to help you succeed? Go to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and nowhere else. Don't go to your friend across the road who's promising you another multi-million contract. Allah is your ultimate supporter, Malik. Therefore, if you want him on side, guard yourself. Be wary. Again, imagine if we had a government in the world today where every single minister had the level of taqwa that Malik had. How much redistribution of wealth would we see? Imagine if we had a single business in the world today where the entire C-suite and middle layer management and even team leads had the level of taqwa of Malik. What kind of employees and what kind of company culture would they follow? Taqwa is used so much within our faith. According to Shaheed Mutahari, he says 251 times the word taqwa is used in a few different forms. And some of us incorrectly think this is God-fearing. Ittaqullah, have fear of Allah. Or ittaqun nar, have fear of fire. But this question comes, why would you fear Allah, the supremely perfect and excellent, and the being that you try to emulate his manifestations, and that should be a mercy to mankind? How can mercy match up with fear? The subtle difference here is this: you don't fear Allah, you fear the justice of Allah. You're wary that my actions will cause a reaction, a just reaction. And we need to correct this mindset in our head. Allah is not to be feared, his justice is to be feared. We say in this very famous line of the dua that you may be familiar with, Ya man la yarju illa fadlu. O he who is not hoped for but his favor. وَلَا يَخَافُ إِلَّا عَدْلُ, and is not feared but his justice. The justice is the cause of the fear. And if we practice self-control, if we ensure we don't live an animalistic life as managers, as leaders, as politicians, then we have nothing to worry about. But the moment that we do, that's when the fear begins. So that is the first foundation that Amir al-Mu'mineen gives to Malik. Have taqwa, ittaqullah Malik, be very, very mindful. The second foundational thing that Amir al-Mu'mineen tells Malik is to have control over his desires. You can see he's not even got anywhere near towards actual governing. It's that you need to have these moral values within you to be a successful governor. Have taqwa and have control of your desires, which he discussed in the last 2 nights. Amir al-Mu'mineen says it in such a beautiful way. He says, وَأَمْرَهُ أَنْ يَكْسِرَ نَفْسَهُ عِنْدَ الشَّهَوَاتِ. He also orders him to break his heart off from his passions. Break it. Completely break it off. Otherwise you won't succeed as a governor. وَيَزَعَهَا عِنْدَ الْجَمَحَاتِ, and to restrain it at the time of their jamahat, when your desires become out of control. This word is typically used in Arabic for when a horse gets back on its back 2 legs and kind of neighs, or I don't know what it does. I'm not too good with animals. We don't really have them in the UK. Imagine your desires. That horse gets back on its 2 legs and you're completely out of control. What controls you in that moment? If the horse wants to gallop, it's going. If your desires want to gallop, it's going. Amir al-Mu'mineen uses this word very, very carefully. Malik, be careful. If your desires get to a point where you're out of control and your desires take over, then khalas, you can't be a successful governor of Egypt. How many leaders, how many business owners, how many of us, when we're managing individuals, our desires take over and our every decision is just focused on what I want, what I want, what I want. Not truth, just what I want. فَإِنَّ النَّفْسَ أَمَّارَ بِالسُّوءِ إِلَّا مَا رَحِمَهُ اللَّهُ, because the heart leads towards evil unless Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mercy. If I could just ask the sisters to try and stand and come forward so that we can allow the other sisters to join. There's a massive space here if you'd be so kind. And the brothers as well, if you could also come forward, and we can do this by remembering رَحِمَ اللَّهُ مَنْ قَائِمٍ مِنْ آلِ مُحَمَّدٍ اللهم صل على محمد على حب الزهراء صل على محمد وآل محمد وحسين الشهيد بكربلاء أفلح من صلى على محمد وآل محمد. Don't let your desires get the better of you, Malik. Keep it under control. And have taqwa at the same time, Malik. Allah's watching you and He's your supporter only if you abide by His rules. Now, unfortunately, leadership today has people like me speaking a lot of words, but as the phrase goes, we talk the talk, but we don't walk the walk. We can never accuse Amir al-Mu'mineen of someone who talked the talk and never walked the walk. Shortbi narrates that he was accompanying some other youths, and he entered the vast open ground of the city of Kufa, where he saw Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam holding a small whip in his hand and standing near to 2 containers filled with gold and silver coins. And he would delicately use this whip to try and control the crowd that had gathered whilst he was distributing this money from the public treasury. Don't have like Daesh visions in your head now, like he's whipping people to get them away. Like he's just being mindful to keep space. You can come at the right time and take the money that you're due. Amir al-Mu'mineen continues to distribute this money until there was nothing left even for himself. He returns home empty-handed, at which point, Shu'bi, the man who's narrating this, he heads home too. Shu'bi sees his father at home, and he says, I've seen and witnessed a very, very strange thing today. And I failed to comprehend if this person's act was either good or was it bad. I.e., he gave all this money, public money, but he never even kept any for himself. Shu'bi's father asked him, like, what do you want about? What are you talking about? Who's this guy? What happened? So Shu'bi narrates to him everything that he'd witnessed. I saw Amir al-Mu'mineen, there was the money, and he was making sure that everyone got their rightful amounts, but then he left without anything for himself. Shu'bi's father hears this, and he bursts into tears. And he says to his son, Shu'bi, oh my son, you've just watched the most excellent person from amongst all the people. How many individuals in positions of power, the moment they're giving the purse strings, suddenly they're a different person entirely. They see the numbers in the bank account, and they see that they can execute transactions. Wow. Whole different person. Doesn't faze Amir al-Mu'mineen, not even in the slightest. In another incident where reported to him, Amir al-Mu'mineen say, bear witness that I have not taken anything for myself and not been negligent with respect to the distribution of money amongst the Muslims. Oh, gold and silver, Amir al-Mu'mineen says, deceive someone other than Ali ibn Abi Talib. Don't even bother trying with me, it won't work. But when dealing with our workers at home, who work tirelessly to make us beautiful food and to wash our bathrooms and to iron our clothes, just how honest are we with our money giving to them? Are we paying them a decent wage? Are we paying them on time? Are we holding back some cash when they make the smallest of mistakes? As business owners, same issue. It's in their haqq. Are we withholding their haqq? As governments, are we redistributing the income of the land to ensure that there's public services for those that need it? Amir al-Mu'mineen is very clear about this point in his actions. The third guidance that Amir al-Mu'mineen shares is that he ensures that you're going to be working super hard. People are going to have opinions about you. You may be thinking that you're doing wonderful work, but don't go around trying to proclaim just how amazing the work is that you're doing. Don't let this arrogance or this kibr, this ego take over you. He says, surely the virtues are known, surely the virtuous are known by the reputation that Allah circulates for them through the tongues of His creations. Oh Malik, even if you're doing a good job and no one's telling you you're doing a good job, trust Allah will take the compliments from their mouths and spread it through the lands. You don't worry about that part. Allah will make sure that people know if it's right for them to know. Don't go and pull compliments. Try and seek the fame. Try and seek the praise. Don't be fixated on their pleasure. Just focus on your taqwa and let Allah do the rest. And if you truly believe that Allah is with you, then you won't worry. Even if you're doing an amazing job and they're saying nothing, you'll be absolutely at ease. If they want to get rid of you, they want to get rid of you. You don't change at all. Again, how many times you'll see an individual stands up and says, I stand for right X. But the majority say they want right Y. Oh, don't worry, I'll just change over to this one, no issues. Anything to get their pleasure. No values, no basis, no foundations, no taqwa, nothing. And this is a massive issue that we're facing in the community today. The inability to do work in a secret manner, and we mentioned this in the last couple of nights. This warning of kibr in Islam is everywhere to be found. The Holy Prophet's reported to say, لا يدخل الجنة, one whose heart contains pride, من كان في قلبي مثقال حبة من خردل من كبر. One whose heart contains pride, even in the measure of a mustard seed, shall not enter paradise. Even the tiniest bit of arrogance, you're not entering paradise, according to the words of the Prophet. And there's a very fine line here between marketing and showing off. I recently moved to Oman, and the Arab culture, and I think it's the same across the GCC, is that they love taking pictures with their new memorandums of understanding. And I was joking with our team, I was like, a memorandum of understanding literally means nothing. I understand that we're going to work together, but if the terms are bad, we won't. Like, it doesn't mean anything, but they love the picture. Now, where is the line between marketing, healthy marketing, here's my services, they're off value, but now I'm boasting? Only the individual knows. And Allah knows what's within you. Back to taqwa, fear Allah, or be wary of the justice of Allah and fear that justice. That He'll know if you overstepped the line or not. And this ego is even striking our communities when it comes to our own affairs. Running for the presidency of Jamaats, speakers, reciters, and we need to hold each other to account. Where is this line of arrogance versus marketing? Whose name goes on the poster first? Whose name is bigger on the poster? Whose picture comes first? Who recites first? Where have we gone? Where have we gone? There was a king known as Khusro Parvez. Sounds like a Pakistani name mixed with Spanish, but it's actually from the Iranian world. He was one of the kings to whom the Holy Prophet had sent letters inviting them to Islam. When the Holy Prophet became a prophet, he started to dish letters out, send messengers, this is what's happening, so on and so forth. So this man was the emperor of Iran at the time. And the letter was sent to him through a man by the name of Abdullah. On receiving the letter, I'm not going to say his name and I'm just going to call him King because I don't want to try and pronounce it. Let's just say King, inverted commas, all disclaimers attached. On receiving the letter, the king of Iran receives it and he orders for it to be translated. It gets translated and he notices that the Holy Prophet had written his own name before the emperor's name. And this was all too much for him to digest. Just this one small thing that the Prophet put his name before the emperor's name. Khalas, this man is now frustrated. How dare you? What does he do? He tears the letter, completely ignores Abdullah, and doesn't even reply to the letter. How fickle man can become. How fickle. And I'm sure in your head you're like, yeah, I've got a few examples of something like this. Where the ego takes over and any goodness that you try to put into your service is now finished. The fourth guidance, and of course there's many guidances, I'm just sharing 6 today, don't worry. The fourth guidance, I think, applies to almost every single person in this room. And I cited at the beginning, it's not just politicians with subordinates. It's not just managers or business owners with teams. It's also those who have help at home, who are fortunate enough to have help at home. How are we treating these beloved creations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Amir al-Mu'mineen gives a beautiful line to Malik about how he should see and treat his subordinates, the people of the land of Egypt. He says, وَاشْعِرْ قَبْلَكَ الرَّحْمَةِ لِلرَّعِيَّةِ. Pay very close attention. And I want you to picture one of those people that you manage in your head right now and apply the learning of Amir al-Mu'mineen to your relationship with that person. Amir al-Mu'mineen is reported to say, habituate your heart to mercy for your subjects. Habituate your heart for mercy to your subjects. The word for habituate that's used is ash'ir. Ash'ir, we actually in Arabic have 2 types of clothing. One type of clothing that doesn't hold close proximity to the body, and other types of clothing that hold very close proximity to the body, like a vest. The word that's used for that inner garment comes from the root sheen, ayn, ra, sha'ar. Amir al-Mu'mineen uses this word very deliberately. Oh Malik, if I can paraphrase. hold mercy with your heart for your subordinate as if it's touching you and touching your heart. How close Amir al-Mu'mineen wants Malik to have these individuals to him. What difference does that mercy have now when you interact with that person that's in your mind? Maybe we're on the complete opposite end, which Amir al-Mu'mineen then says, وَلَا تَكُونَنَّ عَلَيْهِمْ سَبُعًا ضَارِيًا تَغْتَنِمُ أَكْلُهُمْ. Instead of holding mercy closer to your heart for them, maybe we're on this side. He says, do not stand over them like greedy beasts who feel it is enough to devour them. Ready to pounce. The moment there's an issue, a sharp eye, a sharp tone, a horrific sentence. No, have mercy. Mercy so close to your heart. Don't blame them. Have mercy for them. Look at the way that he phrases, don't be like a greedy beast, an animal just ready to go at you at any moment. What's the subtlety here? An animal doesn't even think, they just do. They see an opportunity and they go. We see an opportunity to attack them and we go. We've lowered ourselves to that of the animals who have no intellect. Don't see them like prey. Keep mercy for them close to you. How are we treating our helpers at home? Or more concerningly, as parents, what values are we instilling in our children for how they should treat those individuals at home? Am I as a father, am I as a mother, illustrating to my son and daughter, here is how we treat any insan of Allah? Because your child's just going to follow your way. If they see you shout at them, they're going to crack on and do the same. You set the guidelines of the house. None of you would join a company, if you had the option, of course, where if the CEO sees that you make one mistake, he berates you in public in front of 6 others. The hadith tells us that if an individual makes a mistake and if you give them feedback in public, it's like you've shamed them. But if you give them feedback in private, it's like you've honored them. We're at the dinner table and they make a mistake. Hey! Clicking our fingers, huffing and puffing. Your children will do much the same. We'll never join a company where a CEO does that to us. So why are we doing it within our own households potentially? Habituate mercy for them within your hearts, my dear brothers and sisters. It's the guidance of Amir al-Mu'mineen to Malik. And if you'd like to move on to the 5th guidance, kindly offer salawat ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. But then you'll say, Sadiq, listen, they make so many mistakes. Anytime I give them a piece of work, there's a problem. There's an error. There's an issue. How does Amir al-Mu'mineen guide Malik when it comes to seeing his subordinates, his people, making a mistake? Look at the type of leader that we have in Amir al-Mu'mineen. He tells Malik, look, they will commit slips and encounter mistakes. First thing, acknowledge that it's going to happen. We hire people and we're like, they should be perfect because I'm paying them. No, dude, just like how you make mistakes, they're going to make mistakes. Amir al-Mu'mineen in his first thing, they will commit slips and encounter mistakes. It's going to happen, Malik. They may act wrongly, willfully, or by neglect. So extend to them your forgiveness and pardon in the same way that you would like Allah to extend His forgiveness and pardon towards you. Could it not be the case that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could look at me one day on Yawm al-Qiyamah and say, I'm not going to grant you forgiveness because you didn't grant my creation's forgiveness? That would be justice, no? Forgive them like how you would like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive you. But if you're devoid of any God-centricity, as we discussed in the last 2 nights, then this won't mean anything to you. You'll treat them like rubbish. You'll treat them like garbage. This is why Islam focuses on that sincerity. Amir al-Mu'mineen continues. Why? Because you are over them and you are responsible. and your imam is over you. What's going on here? Amir al-Mu'mineen is saying, Malik, you're over them. But don't forget that your imam is over you while Allah is over him who appointed you. Two very subtle notes here about Amir al-Mu'mineen. Firstly, when he refers to himself as the imam, there's no name. Just when you're leader. Khalas, doesn't need to put his name in the mix. Doesn't need his name anywhere. Doesn't care. Why? Malik, you look after them. I'm looking over you. And Allah is over me as well. And remember who appointed you in the first place. Allah is over you, Malik. You can't hide. Even if the whole family isn't home, you can't treat them like that, Malik. Allah's going to see it. Immediately after this part of the letter, Amir al-Mu'mineen takes the opportunity to again remind Malik about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and where he stands in front of Allah. Just part of it, I'll give you a flavor. He says, do not set yourself, Malik. Do not set yourself to fight Allah, because you have no power before His power, and you cannot do without His pardon and mercy. Do not repent of forgiving or be merciful in punishing. Do not act hastily during anger if you can find a way out of it. The first thing he's saying, you're nothing without Allah. Don't let any ego come in your way. You're ready to shout at your worker? Remember, you're nothing without Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So bow down and submit before you have that conversation. We said yesterday, when you can reprimand your soul, one beautiful way that our teaching tells us is that when you feel anger, if you're standing, then you should sit. And if you're sitting, then you should. Told if you feel anger, go and do wudu. And perhaps the extension, if you feel anger, frustration, and you need to control your soul before you have a very, very tough conversation, go and offer 2 units of prayer and submit to the one that you want to have mercy on you first. Then have the conversation. You want practical tips for management? This is exactly what it's about. Remember your place before you discuss with your employee, before you discuss with your subordinates. But the second half of that statement that Amir al-Mu'mineen is saying is, don't be shy of forgiving them. So many of us, when there's an opportunity to forgive, we're double thinking, triple thinking, quadruple thinking, quintuplet thinking. I don't know what the 6th one is, so I'm not going to say it. We double doubt it. Should I forgive? Should I not? Should I forgive? Should I not? But when it comes to having a go at them, there's no 5 steps of thinking. We're right onto it. We're like the predator that Amir al-Mu'mineen described. He's saying, don't worry. Don't be shy about forgiveness. Be forthcoming with it. And equally, do not act hastily during anger if you can find a way out of it. Take the time, reprimand your soul, bring it back in, being in a state of equilibrium, now have the conversation. And that can apply to any conversation that you have with your spouse, with your family member, with the bus driver, whoever it is. Do not be shy to forgive. Do not be shy to forgive. But at the beginning of this sentence, and this is why it's called Nahj al-Balagha, the eloquence, Amir al-Mu'mineen says something that can't be captured in the English language. He starts the sentence by saying, وَلَا تَنْدَمَنَّ. This form is used for emphasis, double emphasis. Malik, please, 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 please do not be shy in forgiving them. What a merciful man Amir al-Mu'mineen is. And of course, this is within the fiqh boundaries. It's not outside of that. Don't go and be that leader that boasts about his punishments publicly or praises himself for his forgiveness. Remember, Allah is watching you, and remember the taqwa. And we have a beautiful example of Malik doing exactly this in Kufa. Again, Amir al-Mu'mineen is not just selecting a random guy. He knows the person that he's putting into place, which is another lesson for us. So many of us, when we have these beautiful businesses, how often does nepotism come into play? Choose the best person for the job, not just your friend. Once Malik Ashtar was passing through the market of Kufa. And the person narrating the story says that he was looking a bit disheveled, in a bit of a poor state. He was dressed in coarse canvas apparel, and he had pasted a canvas on his head rather than a turban. And one of the traders was sitting in his shop when he saw Malik. And he looked at him with a bit of contempt. And he picked up a lump of earth and lobbed it towards Malik. Malik completely ignored him, proceeded on his way. Firstly, look at the control. Someone's just lobbed some stones or whatever at you. All of us are going to have a lot of things to say. Doesn't care, just keeps on going. A person who had recognized Malik and witnessed the incident went up to the trader and reprimanded him and said, "Shame on you, do you not know who you've just humiliated?" The trader's like, "No, don't really care." The guy tells him this was Malik, the dear companion of Ali ibn Abi Talib. And suddenly this guy has a big shiver down his back. And he starts to realize, okay, I've messed up. He sets off after Malik in order to try and offer his apologies. He noticed that Malik had by this point had entered a mosque and he was already engaged in prayers. So the man decided to wait for Malik to finish his prayers. As soon as Malik had finished praying, the trader falls towards Malik's feet, starts kissing his feet. Malik raises him and asks him, "What are you doing?" The man who threw the stone said, "I am apologizing for the sin that I've committed." Malik replies, "There is no sin upon you. By Allah, I came to the mosque especially to seek forgiveness for you." Imagine if you had a ruler like that. Imagine if you had a CEO like that. Imagine if you had a CEO and a ruler that taught Malik that. Ali ibn Abi Talib. And imagine if you had a Lord who bestowed all of this hikmah on Ali ibn Abi Talib, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If Allah sees you coming back into the masjid asking for forgiveness for a sin that you've committed, if Malik can forgive, if Ali ibn Abi Talib can forgive, if Rasulullah can forgive, what about the creator of them all? The kind of leader that we need to be, according to the teachings of Islam. And the final guidance that we'll share today is this. And this is vital, absolutely vital. And in my brief journey within business, this has been one of the biggest challenges that people trying to be leaders and managers have struggled with the most. So if you want to go back and buy a load of business books, just come and study Islam first and then go to the business book second. Amir al-Mu'mineen tells Malik, "Do not say the following: I have been given authority and I should be obeyed when I order." Why? Amir al-Mu'mineen says, because it engenders confusion in the heart. How many of you have had your boss come to you? They say, "Sadiq, I need you to do this Excel by the end of the day." You're like, "Boss, how come?" "Listen, I'm the boss, just listen." You're like, "All right, man, chill out." And you end up confused. Like, what's the big deal about this? Creates confusion. Amir al-Mu'mineen saying, no, don't just go in and saying, "Because I'm the boss, you listen. Because I'm Malik, your governor, you listen. Whatever I do, you say no." A key part of management or leadership that Amir al-Mu'mineen perhaps is teaching Malik here is explain the why behind your request. Do this now. What do you mean? Listen, we've got a deadline at 6 p.m. If we don't submit these accounts by 6:30, we're going to have a big issue on our hands. Is it possible that you can work on this with me? What kind of boss are you? Are you the one going around saying, "I'm the boss, so you listen and do exactly what I say"? Or are you like the boss that Amir al-Mu'mineen is illustrating you to be? Amir al-Mu'mineen wants Malik to be absolutely rational when he's discussing things with his subordinates, not going in full of frustration. In fact, in fiqh, we have a very beautiful concept that when a judge, when a hakim is about to give his verdict, if he needs to use the bathroom, it is makruh for him in that moment to give the judgment. Why? Because you'll be fidgety. You won't be focused. There could be a chance that you won't be in a rational state of mind. Look at the detail that Islam goes into guiding our judges to ensure absolute justice prevails. Just need to use the bathroom, go use the bathroom, come back, be in a focused place, renew your wudu, perhaps offer that 2 units of prayer if you know it's a tough conversation, and then explain. Not because I'm your leader, explain the why, be empathetic and loving in the way that you do it. These are management lessons from Amir al-Mu'mineen 1400 years ago, yet we're all crazy about Simon Sinek and his books. Relax. Go back to the real leaders. Go back to the leaders who have billions following them. Over 1400 plus years. And Amir al-Mu'mineen reminds Malik again, Amrahu bitaqwallah. Again, he emphasizes this point on taqwa. So the 6 points, just to summarize them back, have taqwa, Malik, a foundational point. Control your emotions and feelings, Malik. Again, a foundational point. Focus on your work and let Allah do all of the tabligh for you and let the word get out. Let Allah extract it from them. But there is a line between marketing and pride. Fourthly, keep this mercy for the people that you're managing close to your heart and be ready to forgive them and don't be proud to punish. Fifthly, acknowledge that just like you, they're humans. They're going to make mistakes. Don't be surprised if they make a mistake. All of your management techniques so far have been riddled with mistakes. And lastly, don't just say, because this is how it is, I'm your boss. Be empathetic, be calm, be rational, and explain the why behind what you're doing. And again, Amir al-Mu'mineen walks the walk. Because during his Khalifa, he once said that throughout Iraq, my subjects are in ease and in comfort. They drink sweet water and eat bread made of wheat. And Amir al-Mu'mineen once freed a man by the name of Abu Nizar, one of his slaves, on the condition that he would work for the Imam in his plantation for 5 years. The Imam later granted him the task of supervising his fields and springs, one of which popularly was named after Abu Nizar for the amazing work that he did. It was known as the River of Abu Nizar. Any case, Abu Nizar relates this following story. He says that one day the Imam came to check out the field. And again, I find this fascinating because in Toyota, they have a system called Gemba. It's a Japanese word. Where the senior management, let's say a door's not going onto the car properly, they'll stop the production belt and all of them will come down to have a look and see what's going on. And you can imagine, it's like the mafia, the Japanese mafia turning up to check out your work. You're going to be panicked, right? What is the etiquette by which this senior management should come? Maybe they've got the best of intentions. We want to come and help this guy and see how we can improve his work environment so we can get the door onto the car successfully next time. What kind of approach should one take? Something to think about. The Imam comes to inspect the fields. Firstly, he dismounts from his horse and he inquires, do you have some food with you? Abu Nizar replies, yes, although I fear it doesn't benefit your rank, Amir al-Mu'mineen. He's got something called gourd with some fat oil. Doesn't sound too good, to be honest. The Imam requested him to bring him. Abu Nizar has some of this food, washes his hands, brings the food, washes his hand and proceeds to eat. The Imam does the same. He washes his hands, he drinks some water, and requested him to bring a pickaxe. He took the pickaxe, entered into a dried well, and dug energetically until he was overcome with exhaustion and fatigue. He came out of the well to rest, wiping the perspiration and the sweat dripping from his holy forehead. And within a few minutes, he again entered the well and began digging diligently. Very interesting point here. Management comes to check out how their subordinate is doing. Management asks, do you have some food? Yeah, listen, you take a break, I'm going to get on with the work myself. When was the last time did we see a CEO roll up his sleeves and get into the factory, get into the thick of it? Instead, they sit back, look at their dashboard, summon you to the office, and you do the walk of shame into the office, and then berate you and leave thinking like they're some kind of king. Amir al-Mu'mineen comes down from his horse, checks, have you got food? You crack on eating, I'm going to crack on with some work. Comes out, tired, cracks on with more work. As Amir al-Mu'mineen is digging, a fountain suddenly gushes out of the well like the neck of a camel. The Imam immediately emerges, still perspiring, and cries, this is charity. This is charity. Bring me some ink and paper. Abu Nizar goes off, brings some ink and paper for the Imam, who writes down the following. This is an endowment from the servants of Allah, Amir al-Mu'mineen, given to the needy ones of Medina as charity. A charity that cannot be sold, gifted or transferred so long as Allah is the owner of the heavens and the earth. Only Hassan and Hussein may claim it if they fall in need of it. For them, this would then become their property. Another management lesson. You've got some IP, ensure you protect it. Clarify who owns this IP. And ensure that IP is yours for so long that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the master of the heaven and the earth. Management lessons from Amir al-Mu'mineen. Since back then, how many technologists today, they build this beautiful algorithm. They don't patent it in time and someone copies their work. Amir al-Mu'mineen saying, no. Make sure you take ownership of your work. But also with this he's saying this is charity for my people. This is charity. But it's going to be owned by Hassan and Hussein. You think they're going to take it, or you think they're going to continue it to be charity? So many business books with moral foundations. Ali ibn Abi Talib was the one who created them in the first place. Why does it take a Westerner posting their book on Amazon to inspire us to good morality rather than the Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam? Maybe it comes back to that first point. Maybe within our houses we don't even have Nahj al-Balagha on our shelves. And that's an investment that we as a community can make very easily. Distribute it. Create circles where people can come and study it. Yes, fine, maybe the speaker will be in Urdu, but allow someone, you all speak Urdu, the majority of you anyway, get the best of you to translate it. Go letter by letter, saying by saying, and invest in it. At least understand the teachings of Amir al-Mu'mineen. All of these traits coming from the root of taqwa, coming from the root of controlling your desires. If you can't do that, then there's no hope. In Ziyarat Ashura, we say, Assalamu alayka, yabna Amir al-Mu'mineen. Yabna ibn. Ibn, we usually say as son. More specifically, it can be understood to be the edifice, or the fruit, or the building and the foundation as set by that father. So let's see it this way. Peace be upon you, O my salam, upon the one who built and nurtured Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, none other than Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi. Here is Hussein. Here is Hussein. The same level of calmness. He's not just faced with a business issue now. He's faced with life and death, yet these same traits shine through. Don't forget that just earlier, before he arrives in Karbala, he's just heard the news that Muslim ibn Aqil, one of his closest companions, has been given one of the most brutal deaths. And he's now looking after Hamida, the now orphaned daughter of Muslim. He's not fazed. Historical reports tell us that Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam arrives in Karbala on the 2nd of Muharram in the year 61 after Hijrah, 680 in Gregorian terms. Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam reaches a certain land. He looks around and then he says, this is the place of karbin wa bala. This is the place of sorrow and affliction. What else does he say? Abu Abdullah alayhi salam says that this is the place of sorrow and affliction. This is where our mounts will be stabled. This is where we will make our camps. This is where our men will be killed. And this is where our blood will be spilled. Imagine if you were stood in front of the place that you're going to get killed. How easy are you, or how nervous are you? But the Imam does something so phenomenal. He's facing the place where he's going to be butchered to death. Look at how calm and eloquent even he is with his pen. He asks for a pen and paper and he writes a letter to his half-brother Muhammad ibn al-Hanafiyyah. Imagine what your last letter or WhatsApp to a loved one would be. Assalamu alaikum, I love you, I love you, I love you, I'm so sorry, forgive me, forgive me, forgive me. You'd go through so many different things. It probably won't even make any sense. Look how in control Hussein is of his soul. He says, in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. min Husayn ibn Ali ila Muhammad ibn Ali, and to the rest of Banu Hashim. It is as if the world never existed and the hereafter has always been there. And he ends the letter. Hussein is ready. This is Karbala, I'm ready. My father nurtured me for this. My mother nurtured me for this. How does he know? Back at the time of the Prophet, he would be told, Hussein, this is going to come your way. So many different incidences that we can narrate about how many times he was told where this certain dust that Jibreel would have, then they would say that this dust would turn red on the day that Hussein is killed. Hussein is unfazed. His whole life he's lived with knowing this. He's completely unfazed. I ask you, Hussein, was this land known as Karabin wa Bala for what reason? Why was it known as the land of sorrow and affliction, O Hussein? Would it be because on one day in Ashura you would stand and call, هل من ناصر ينصرنا? Is there anyone to help us, the dear Ahl al-Bayt? Oh Hussein, was this the land of sorrow and affliction because you would lose your best friend Habib ibn Mudahir? Or would it be because you would see the face of your brother Hassan through his son Al-Qasim, that you would see a young 13-year-old boy go to correct his shoelace and his sandal and he would be struck? Is this the land of sorrow and affliction because this is where the face that remembered people of Rasulullah would go out in Ali and al-Akbar? Would you hear the adhan of Ali? And it would remind you of the adhan of your grandfather. How would you see Ali when he would have a spear within his chest and you would run towards your son? Is this why it's the land of sorrow and affliction, O Aba Abdullah? Or is it when Abbas would go to Furat and you would see that flag fall, Hussein, and you would say, Al-an inkasara dhahri, and now my back is broken for I've lost Abbas. Oh Hussein, I ask you from a father to a father, and on behalf of the mothers to another parent, oh Hussein, is this land known as the sorrow and affliction because you would see an arrow fly through the air towards your arms, but in your arms you would be holding a young infant child? Oh Hussein, is that why this is the sorrow and affliction? Or is it because once you are killed, the enemies would go to your lady folk and would start to loot them and would beat their cheeks? Is it the land of sorrow and affliction because you would foresee what would happen to Sukaina's earrings? Or is it because you now see Zainab and the women and the children be taken from the land of Karabin wa Bala through to Kufa and Sham? على لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون والعاقبة للمتقين إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. May Allah accept all your tears. May Allah accept all of your azab. May all of this act as a shafa'ah on Yawm al-Qiyamah for you, inshallah. May your azab, may your chests that you beat be a source of shafa'ah for you on Yawm al-Qiyamah. Do not be shy on these nights. Treat them as if they're your last. Send your voices to ease the heart of Zahra. because she was promised that a generation would come after that would never forget Hussein. And with our voices, when we recite the Aza, we say to her, Abad wallah ya Zahra, ma ninsa Husayna ya Hussein.